Time now for a closer look at some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former Utah Democratic Party Chair Peter Kroon and former Utah GOP Chair Rob Anderson. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, pleasure.
Let's start off with Super Tuesday. Some pretty exciting times for the state of Utah. We have candidates coming here trying to win over Utah votes. This is new for us this time around. So let's get into that first. Peter, let's start with you. What's your assessment of what you're seeing in the Democratic field as we head to Super Tuesday?
Well, so overall nationwide, I think it's still a pretty open race. I think anybody could emerge. I mean, we see Bernie Sanders sort of taking the lead with Pete Buttigieg, but I think there's other candidates out there that are coming on strong. I'm a Bloomberg supporter and co-chair of his campaign here in Utah, so we'll see what happens there. He's had a few issues in the race over the last couple of weeks, but I think anything can happen. I think in Utah last time I think was the second highest Bernie Sanders supporting state in the nation, so when the right goes right in Utah, the left goes left, and we were a big Bernie state, and so we'll see what I think that may be the case again this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit, but let's bring you in, Rob. As a Republican, and you're kind of watching what's happening on the Democratic side, what are you watching for here?
Well, I think those candidates coming in energize the Democratic base, and that base is the far left base, which is it's a minority in the state. You got to realize that the fastest growing party is the unaffiliated voters. So you've got the Republicans 3-1 over the Democrats, and you've got the unaffiliated base. And so they're energizing their base. They're trying to capture some energy there, maybe sway some of the unaffiliated voters their direction. And that's not a bad tactic. You know, you see a lot of that, and I think it's great for the state to be more involved in politics in either way. So
yeah, let's talk more about that. Mayor Pete came during the week. Bloomberg came during the week as well. What about that? What about Utah being on the map and being more in the mix this time around?
I think it's great. I mean, it's nice because usually, as we say, we've been a flyover state. Seems like that's changing now over the last few years, and it's great to see candidates coming here because traditionally Republican or Democrat, they didn't need to come. Now it seems like they need to come here. And I'm also excited that we're having a primary this year. Last time we had a caucus, and for the Democrats, that was a real mess. That's when I was chair of the Utah Democratic Party, and it was a little bit of an Iowa situation that we had. So the primary is a lot cleaner way to go, and we appreciate the support of the state in holding the primaries.
The Democratic side, obviously still up for grabs, not on the Republican side. So
right.
As a Republican and you look at that, are you still liking the attention you're seeing Utah get from this?
I don't mind it at all. In fact, I lobbied for the presidential primary, the state running that, because the individual parties, we saw what happened in Iowa. That's a microcosm of the funding that state parties have, and they can't go out there and afford to do a clean election like the state's built to do. So I was happy that the state did that. It puts us on the map in Super Tuesday. It gets more people involved in politics, and I've always said more people gets you a better result in the end. So I want everybody to be involved this year.
What candidate well, I mean, you're chairing Bloomberg, so that kind of answers that question for me. But do you believe he is best equipped out of all the Democratic field to take on President Trump? And is that the ultimate goal that you are looking for as a Utah Democrat?
You know, not everybody's excited about the billionaire versus the billionaire, but, you know, as with Donald Trump, when you have that much money, you don't have to be beholden to others. So I think that is a good thing with Michael Bloomberg. He also has run a big city, New York City, so he's been in politics. He's not new to the game. And I think he's a candidate who really can take on Donald Trump, and he's not going to put up with his nonsense. And but I think any of the candidates would be a good rival to Donald Trump, and I think they'll all give him a run for his money.
All the same compared to the other? Or would more be more equipped for that?
Well, I think those with more experience who have been in politics, I think, are better equipped to some of those political attacks that you see. They're already starting within the Democratic field, and Donald Trump's already taking a few shots at the Democrats. So I think those who have been in politics understand it a little bit better than those who are maybe new to the game.
Rob, President Trump's going to win the primary in Utah. He struggled in 2016, didn't win the primary, and even in the general election, didn't perform as you would expect a Republican to in the state.
Right.
Do you think this time around, because there are other candidates on the ballot still, maybe 5 or 6, I can't remember the exact number, most notably Bill Weld, former Massachusetts governor. Well, are you expecting to see some protest votes against the president in the Republican primary?
Yeah, but not as many as we saw back in 16. I think he takes 80% plus of the vote in the primary, and I think in the end, in November, we'll see a 60-65% vote in Utah for President Trump.
So
which always surprises me. I mean, we talk about being the family values state, and then we vote for somebody who really has very few values.
Talk about that.
And juxtapose that with a booming economy and all those things, all those indicators that people are aware of. You know, unemployment down.
That's what frustrates me. We're willing to look past a person's personal values, and well, life is good for me, so I'm going to look past what I consider my values and vote for somebody who like Donald Trump.
Right, which is what most of the people who are against Trump, they go after a character attack. We didn't elect a moral man always. I mean, if you go look back at the history of our presidents, there's some amoral practices going on in the People's House and the White House, and some things that have occurred over time. And so, I think a lot of people are willing to overlook that for substance and results. Let's go back to the economy, Jerusalem, the things that are going on, America great in the world again, those kind of things, trade practices being, those things will overwhelm.
Historically, we have seen when the economy's good, an incumbent president tends to fare pretty well. We'll see how this all plays out. It's going to be fascinating as it moves down the line. Let's move on to another subject, surprisingly contentious year after year, is daylight saving time. We have a proposal that overwhelmingly passed the Senate to move Utah permanently to mountain daylight time, so lighter later in the day, but kind of facing some divide in the House. First off, your thoughts on daylight saving. Before we get into why it's so contentious all the time, does something need to happen here?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like we're chasing an issue that's really not that significant. I get up at 5 a.m. during the week and maybe 6, 7 during the weekend, so it's often dark when I get up anyway. But the idea of having it not yet light in the winter till about 9 o'clock, maybe that could be a little bit tough on people trying to get up and get to work.
Your thoughts, Rob?
Well, saving time goes from March to November, right, which is the majority of the year. So, for that small portion where they move the clock back to standard time, I don't know that it affects us that much. I think people, if anything, don't want to change the clock, first of all. And if they do at the end, I mean, I think we're happy with what we are, because you're going to lose an hour in the spring and gain an hour in the fall. So, it died before, it's probably going to die on the vine again.
Yeah, well, that's when we really hate it, is when we lose that hour of sleep, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of consensus, so to get rid of it, there's just so much question about the right way to go, and that's why we tend to see it it's such a controversial issue year after year. I want to move to another subject real quick. Congressman from Georgia looking to repeal the Johnson Amendment. That is the amendment that forbids churches from endorsing political candidates. Is it time to do that? Your thoughts?
No. I've been involved with nonprofits, involved with my own church. I think churches need to stay out of campaigns. Doesn't mean they can't advocate for policies that are important to them. They can do it up at the legislature, but I think it's a bad idea to have nonprofits and churches involved in politics.
All right, your thoughts on that, Rob?
Gosh, I think the overarching thing here is the First Amendment rights of free speech and those kind of things. Should it apply to a church? I don't think, regardless of whatever would occur there, I don't think the majority of religion in Utah would do that. I think they're happy with teaching correct principles in the church place, but politics and religion, they're like oil and water. They're hard to mix, and generally speaking, you create a lot of division within your religion to do that.
You mentioned that you're okay with them backing ideas and proposals and whatnot, and we do see that. You belong to the LDS Church, you belong to the Catholic Church, both of which are very active in the state of Utah. You're okay with that?
Yeah.
Involving in issues. Why is that?
Because, as Rob mentioned, freedom of speech, and those are issues that are important to the church. So they should be able to talk about those issues and go up to the Capitol. But when it gets involved in backing certain candidates, then I think it gets very contentious within the nonprofit or the religion, and then you're dividing your own house by doing that. So I think it's just a bad idea for the nonprofits and the religions, because I think it can only hurt their own institutions.
All right, Rob, I'll give you the last 20 seconds.
I think that if we're looking at the South, the Bible Belt, I think the pastors down there for years have endorsed candidates within their congregation. I don't know that is a violation of the Johnson Amendment, as it were, but it occurs on a smaller scale.
Okay.
And in Utah, as the former Democratic chair, I'd hear from Democrats who say they'd go to church and be told that they shouldn't be voting for Democrats, and so it happens here in Utah, and I don't think that's a good thing.
Probably more vote for Democrats based on that.
A lot of emotion behind that as well.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, glad to have you with us. Great conversation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics.